It's hard to make maps. Drawing random blobs for your land masses and placing terrain features randomly doesn't make your map look very good. You need to think about why different terrain features are there. In tectonics, there are generally two factors: how the plates collide and whether they're colliding on land or in the sea. There are generally three ways that different plates can interact. The plates can smash into each other. This can happen from them going straight into each other, one plate going one way and then another plate smashing into it, or the two plates going in the same direction and the second one being faster. The plates can slide along each other. This can happen either when they're sliding in opposite directions or the same direction at different speeds. Or they can come apart. This happens either when the plates are coming directly apart or one plate is moving in one direction and the other plate is going away from that plate. In total, that's 9 different things that can happen at a plate boundary. Colliding ocean plates will form long island chains with some volcanoes. An ocean plate colliding with a land plate will form long mountain ranges along the coast with some volcanoes. There won't really be any islands along these coasts. The only islands will be where the land side of the collision is sea. So in some bays and stuff. Land plates colliding with land plates will form massive mountains, most likely the biggest mountains in your world, unless it's right next to the ocean. There also might be a few volcanoes. Ocean plates coming apart will have underwater mountain ranges and some underwater volcanoes. Volcanic islands can form at vertexes of spreading ocean plates. Spreading ocean and land plates just turn into spreading ocean and ocean plates. Spreading land plates will form big valleys called rift valleys and some volcanoes. I didn't know how to draw sliding plates without making it 3D, so I just drew them like this. Underwater sliding plates will have a lot of earthquakes and likely cause a lot of tsunamis. No volcanoes form on sliding plates. Sliding ocean and land plates will make some tsunamis and have a lot of earthquakes, and sliding land plates will just have earthquakes. Sliding plates don't add any topographical features. There can also be hotspots, where there's a hole in a plate that volcanoes form on. Hotspots normally form island chains going from biggest to smallest. The biggest island is on the side the plate is moving. You can figure out how your map is going to look by simulating the entire tectonic history of your world. For that, you'll need to know that when continents get too big, they'll fracture and drift apart. So you just draw a blob of land, and then you have it fracture and drift apart. And then you repeat this until you have your world map. Or instead of simulating the entire history of your world's tectonics, you could just kind of figure it out for the present. For ocean currents, you should have 5 horizontal currents alternating between going east and west. And then you add the continents and you just kind of make up how the currents move around them. Currents moving towards the equator are cold currents, and currents moving away from the equator are warm currents. There should be 6 horizontal alternating wind patterns. The land doesn't alter the wind enough to change the wind pattern. There's also humidity and temperature. Temperature is higher near the equator and colder near the poles. This is the biggest factor, but there are some others too. A strong factor in humidity is rain shadows. Rain shadows are basically when mountains block clouds from blowing to certain areas, so that the windward side is moist and the other side is very dry and hot. Areas that are further inland are normally drier than areas on the coast because there's less water to evaporate and form mist and clouds. Areas near warm currents have a higher humidity because the water is warmer and more likely to evaporate. Areas near cold currents have a lower humidity because the water is colder and less likely to evaporate. Places where the wind blows towards the land have a higher humidity because the water is blown into the air. Places where the wind blows towards the sea have a lower humidity because there's no water being blown into the air. Different habitats depend on different temperatures and humidities. Jungles have to be very moist, so I'd put them in places with warm ocean currents and wind blowing off the sea. Deserts have to be really dry, so I'd put them only in rain shadows or really far inland. But they can spread further north and south than jungles would. And I wouldn't put taigas on the very poles. I'd have it a little bit further south than polars and tundras. Also, this is way oversimplifying things, so I'll have a link in the top right corner to a video that explains it more in depth. Rivers come from springs, glaciers, or something else and flow downhill to the ocean or a lake. Rivers don't flow down ridges, they flow down valleys. And they also don't flow uphill, they flow downhill. This all seems very obvious, but rivers can actually sometimes flow through mountains. If the river was older than the mountain, then it could have eroded a canyon as the mountain was pushed up. River deltas won't just be plain. Over time, they gather up sand, and then they make sandy peninsulas with swamps on them. Coastlines can have rocky peninsulas with bays between them. This happens when the ocean current is going at an angle towards the land. Sometimes the ocean makes sandbars that encloses little lagoons. Sometimes these sandbars can make peninsulas if the land has a sharp corner. And then where the sea's really rough, there can be really jagged, tall cliffs. But of course, everybody knows this. Volcanoes give you lush forests.